This is an exercise on debugging. You're given several modules. In each module there are a bunch of functions, and you're to run them, see the error message, or see what the thing produces wrong, and then fix those errors. Here I've put my name in on the first to do as usual, and now the instructions are to debug each one. You read the docstring of the code that you're testing, broken one at the first one. You also look at the pictures that are there to see what's up. You then run the thing, you look at the error message, you click on the bottom blue link to take you to the line that broke, you think about that error message, and then you fix the code. It's important to resist the urge of fiddling when you're fixing things, but rather instead you need to think about what the error message means and what that says. So I've marked that done, and I'm gone down to broken one here. Somewhere along the line I right-clicked and marked as source as root. Here's the pictures that are shown. So for each one, there's a picture showing the result. Broken one is supposed to have those circles like that. And it says that it's to draw the given RG circle on the given rose window, then draw another one whose radius is twice that of the given RG circle, and whose center is the same. The error message indicates that one required positional argument, radius, is missing. Clicked on the blue line over there. And indeed, when you make a circle, you have to give it two things. It's not the radius that's missing, however, it's the center. I look up at the code, I see that the center of the new circle is to be the same as that of the given circle. So I'm going to put in some code here saying that the circle's center is the original circle's center. The new circle's one is that. I run again, and I see whether I get the result that I'm after, which is to have a circle and then another one with twice the radius. And there we go. I then mark this one as done. I comment out the test case, and I'm ready to go to broken 2, which broken 2 draws a RG circle with radius 33 centered at XY, where X and Y are given. When I go ahead and run the program, I see that I get an error message that says in init, attribute error, tuple object has no attribute clone. This is an important error that I noticed happens in the Rose Graphics module. I now have a choice, either the error is in Rose Graphics or my code. I think it's much more likely it's in my code. So I work up the way through the Rose Graphics, through those blue things there, until I get to the one that is in my code. That is, I skip over the bottom Rose Graphics one, the second Rose Graphics one, and go to the one that is at line 201 in M1 in my code. I click on that blue line. It brings me right to the line in my code that led to the place where the code crashed. Now, when you get an error message that says tuple object has no attribute clone, that usually indicates that you constructed an object incorrectly. Here I constructed a circle. It gave what's called a tuple, xy. In fact, it should have been an RG point at xy. So I make the change in the code there, put in RG point with a capital P, run again, and I see that I do indeed get my second circle there. That is my two circles there for the two test cases that are working great. I compare it to the visual picture. Everything looks good. I then go off and will do the usual marking it done and coming out the test case and move on to the next problem. For this one, I'm supposed to draw n vertical lines on the given window such that they all have the given point as its topmost point, the leftmost of these lines, and all the ones have the given length, and they're all the given distance apart, and I'm supposed to have a pause in between them. Here's the given picture. You can see that I'm supposed to draw n lines starting at a given point, each with a given length and distance apart. So that's the problem here. There are two test cases there, by the way. So I then continue and go back to the code. I run the code, and I see that I get a unsupported operation types for plus, point, and int. Well, that suggests that I go back to the code by clicking on the relevant blue line, bottom one there, and I look to see why that line of code, b equal b plus distance between lines, is bad. Well, distance is a number, but b, I look a few lines above there, is a point. A point. Can't add points and numbers. So I think I meant to add the x-coordinate of b to the distance. So I go ahead and fix that, and then I run again, and I'm going to look at my picture, and oops, didn't quite get it right. They're supposed to be vertical lines. Apparently, I moved the bottom points, but not the top points, it looks like. So I go back to the code there, go back to the line where I was. I'm going to make a mistake briefly, by the way. I'm going to say b.y. Oh no, it's not the y coordinates of the point b that's on the bottom. It's the top point's x coordinate. I'm trying to move them all to the right. So I make a's x be what it was plus the distance between lines. So I'm accumulating both a and b, having the effect of moving, and that's their x coordinates that I'm doing, having the effect of pushing them to the right. I go ahead and run again, and then I compare to see how the output has appeared. And I see them as it's running there. 1, 2, 3, perfect. Test case passed. I compare against my picture one more time. There it is, and I'm ready to move on to the next problem. I do the usual thing with marking it to do and commenting out the test case from the one I just did. Now I'm ready to do this one here. I see that there's a clue, by the way, that the variable radius is not being used. The problem is to draw a green filled circle centered at the given point as shown in the picture. I run the code and I see an error message show up over there that says type error, unsupported operand types for subtraction, for minus, int, and string. I click on the blue line. Now let's see here, rows graphics, rows graphics, rows graphics, rows graphics, rows graphics, rows graphics. I work my way all the way up until I find one that isn't in rows graphics, and there it is. Now that's the attaching the circle to the window, but that doesn't look like that's the problem. I look a few lines up and I see that when I constructed this circle, I used the string instead of the variable radius. I run the code, I see that it works just fine, and I'm ready to move on to the next problem. I do my usual marking of to do and commenting out the previous test case. Now I move on down to the next one. For this one, I'm to draw the given RG circle and then an RG square that circumscribes it. Circumscribes it means you have a little box around it. Can't really see it with the pink one, but with the red one there, you see that red square that is around, exactly around the circle. I go ahead and run. I see that I get an error message that says one required positional argument is missing, length of each side. I click on the place, I see that I'm here in square, and now I want to find out how to make a square. One way to do that is I select the word square, and then I go up to the view menu. I then click on quick documentation. That brings up the documentation for the square class. I click on the word square there, and I see that it says some stuff about a square. In particular, it says that a square takes a point that is its center and then some lengths of each side. I've already got the center, but I add in that the length of each side to be a radius, and I then run and see where I'm at. When I run, I see there's nothing there. I'm not seeing my square. A lot of possibilities for that. We'll explore that in a subsequent debugging thing. But here, the problem might be that it's underneath the circle, that the square, instead of being on top of the circle like it's supposed to be, is underneath. See, here's how it's supposed to be. The square is to circumscribe, to be bigger than the circle. But I seem to recall that I made the radius to be half. I made the length of each side to be a radius. Well, that's too small. I need to be the length of each side to be twice the radius of the circle. So let's go on back to the code and see if I can make that happen. So here we are, going back to the code and going up there, and oh yeah, there's circle radius. Need to have twice that if I'm going to have this square be big enough. So I go on back up there and change it to be 2 times. I run again and I see that all looks good. There it is. Circumscribed as desired. So I'm ready to go off to the next problem here at this point. I do my usual marking the do done and commenting out the previous test case, and now I'm ready for the next one. Now this one's different than the previous ones, and this is going to produce console output. The problem is that an integer comes in, positive integers, to return the sum of 1 plus a half plus a third plus blah, 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 1 over n. I go ahead and run, and I see the console output over there on the right. I see that when I do that, here it is again. When I do that, I get an error message that says divide by, says zero division error, division by 0. So I go back to my code and, yeah, k starts at 0, so I'm now dividing by 0. So I change that to a k plus 1. It'll turn out not to be all that's needed, but that's the obvious thing to do at starters here. So I go ahead and run again, and this time I look at the output. It doesn't crash, but it gives me wrong numbers. I expected 1.8 something or another, and the actual is 2.0 something or another. And then I expected 5.18 something or another for the second test, and the actual output is 5.19 something. So I go back to my code, and the key here is to put in a print statement. I print k, so I know where I am in the loop, and also k plus 1, so that I see what I'm adding to my total, and then the total itself. I run again, and I'm going to see what we get here and see if that wakes me up to the error. When I do so, I see that in the first test case, it prints 0, 1, 2, 3, and then k plus 1 being 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, let's see here. And then total does seem to be going up. I better look at the test case and see what the situation is for that one. I scroll up then to the test cases, and I find that in this test case, I'm supposed to, well, let's see, the argument is 3. So I should have calculated 1 plus a half plus a third. But it appears that I actually went forward and calculated all the way up to 1/4. I went one too often, one too many. So I'll come on back down here, change my n plus 1 to an n, and then run again. When I do so, killing the previous run, by the way, when I do so, I see that I'm passing my tests here for the second one, 5.18 something, 5.18 something, and the first test passing as well. So I do that. I then go back and comment out my print statement. You should never leave a debugging statement in your code when you're done. In a production thing, you would actually delete it, but here I'll just comment it out so that if I have problems, I can do it. I run again, confirm that I really do have the test being passed, and I do. I go ahead and kill that run, which is going on to the graphics, and move on to the next problem. I do my usual marking done and commenting of the previous test case, and I get to this next one, which takes a number n, a point, a length, the distance between lines in a window. You're supposed to draw n lines, the given number, starting at the given point, each line having the given length and with the given distance between the lines. So that's the problem that's supposed to do. I go ahead and run this code, and I see that, oh, there's the picture showing what it's supposed to be like. So n lines are all supposed to be horizontal lines, start at the given point, given length, given distance between them, and a given number of them. So I go ahead and I run, and I'll see, let's get on back to the code here, yes, and I'll go ahead and run, and I see that I get output here, and the first test case goes just fine, but the second test case crashes. And it does so with a message that's very helpful. Did you, it says, could not place the shape on the given window. Did you accidentally close a window that needed to be rendered again? And indeed I did. See that window.close? And it said very clearly in the instructions, must render but not close. So if you see that message, you know for sure you've done a close that you weren't, that the instructions said not to do. Passes the test, I'm good to go, and I've completed this exercise on debugging. I'm going to finish up by uncommenting all my test cases and doing a last run to be sure that I really do pass all the tests there. So that's what I'm doing there, uncommenting the test cases. Then I'm going to run. I'm going to see that all the pictures look just like they're supposed to look, and yes, indeed they do, and I'm genuinely done. I'll then commit my work, commit and push my work, and that's it.